Good evening, everybody. Welcome. Welcome to round 2. I'm so happy to see the room full again. So thank you for, I know it's always a race to the finish to wrap up whatever the rest of your day involved and then get here in time for a 5:30 meeting. So thank you all very much for hanging in there and coming back. We have a packed session, so I'm just here to say bravo to you for coming. We're still, staff is reminding me, we're still in this phase of going slow to go fast. So we're still sort of building that groundwork, but I am assured that by the second half of this meeting, you will really be starting to talk nuts and bolts and understanding that this will be a hard process. I think this will be a challenging process for everyone to try and build towards something we can all agree to. And in my mind, and I think kind of standing here on behalf of the council, I would say that the quality of that process is extremely important to us because we are looking to kind of model how we grapple with these very difficult local issues and come to some kind of agreement and common pathway. So the work that you're doing here, it's about the tools and the strategies you ultimately focus on, but it is also about the quality of that process. And I thank you all very much for committing your time and your goodwill and your energy toward that work. And with that, I will turn it over to our fearless leader.
We took your feedback from last time and compiled it. City staff chewed on it, I chewed on it. We're not going to go through all the individual tweaks, but you'll see them tonight, from the less plastic, higher quality food options, woohoo, all the way to some of the ways that you are grouped and having conversations with folks today, and then also some of the documents that we'll pass out today. You are here to think deeply about the challenge of housing affordability in Eugene, and then based on that deep thinking that you're here to do together, generate a list of ideas and actions the city can take to improve housing affordability here. Just reminding us that that's what we're here to do. We know there's some of you who are deeply steeped in these issues, that this is what you even maybe do for a living in one way or another. And we also know that there's some of you who are representing the common voice and a common experience in Eugene, and you don't know the slightest thing about land code and construction regulations and all this other stuff. And all of those voices are equally important and valuable here, and we just appreciate that. Reminding you of where we've been. In September, we did a little bit of training in relationship building, and we started telling the story of housing affordability. We're going to continue that today with the story. And hopefully I know we're going to get into the interests and some options. Those of you who are really driven to the solution side of it, you will start seeing those come up in the options today. So reminding ourselves, this is what we're talking about. I want to remind you of the context of who you're working with. This is the who. You are the housing working group. There are other efforts happening throughout the city that ultimately are pooling into your ultimate decision makers with City Council. That includes the clear and objective housing standards, which is happening now, evaluation and updating of those. I would like to think these may end up being related in some way, but it could be that those end up being separate. There's a housing economist that's been hired who is providing data to the city and evaluating some potential options that they will also be feeding in. This person can also, or this group can also infuse your all's work, and we'll talk about what that'll look like later, to help provide some data. Some of you are very hungry for that. There's a code audit happening, and there is an ADU lawsuit that's maybe in the mix somewhere, right? All of those things are going to contribute to the ultimate landscape and the decisions that City Council has to make, right? So reminding ourselves that we are this piece, and we will send recommendations to City Council, but there are other pieces going on that'll factor into their decision making ultimately, okay? So that's the who. In the end, I had some feedback that said, it's not clear to me still, like, what's our end result? So I want to remind ourselves, in the end, we are going to have a list, and we'll tier it by what options we come up with that we can get to unanimous agreement around. This might be a small list, and that's okay, but I think that there will be some ideas that come out that everybody says, yes, that's a smart decision for Eugene, and we're going to go that way. We also might have some areas where we have agreement. Maybe all but 1 to 3 people feel good about the idea. And we'll note those things, and we'll make sure to include why the opposition, the 1 to 3 folks who don't agree with that, feel that way. We'll have partial agreement. Even Beyonce has tape problems, it looks like. Sorry. We'll have some things that have partial agreement, and then we'll have other ideas that come up and that you all look at and say, no, not even half of us can agree to that. So in the end, I'll compile a summary for City Council that will kind of go over who we are and how we worked and what those outcomes are. Okay, so this is our end product. Are there any questions up to that point?
I was wondering, we're not going to, is that what the December meeting is going to be about, or are we looking at making some of these agreements and making these decisions progressively over the next couple of weeks?
At the end, excuse me, Jason, at the end of our November 20-something meeting, whatever the 4th meeting group will be, we will end with this made. So I'll get into the specifics of when we'll talk about some of those things, if that's your question.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. Perfect. Yeah. All right. So that's the what, the who, and the what at the end. I want to remind ourselves. I want to remind us that housing is a wicked problem. We talked about what that looks like, and the how. We're going to talk about it because it's such a tricky problem. Is here in this collaborative problem-solving cycle. How many of you are feeling antsy that we're not talking about solutions yet? At least one here. Some of you are just shy. I know some of you are like itching for it, right? Okay. It's on purpose. It's on purpose because when we jump to the solutions right away, we sit around and fight about them, right? When we take a little bit more time to understand what's important to us and understand our priorities, we will come to much better solutions. So thinking about the timing, this story happened in September, and we're going to finish it now in October. We're going to talk about interests and options at today's October meeting. Then we're going to bring in some data that may influence some of your thinking and help inform how effective some of these things might be. At our November 14th meeting, we'll start working through the criteria and some straw design and evaluation, which means kind of floating up, well, what would this idea look like, or what would that idea look like, and trying to dig into some of those ideas and evaluating them. So that'll also happen on November 14th. This can be a full week's worth of time, but we're gonna spend November 14th and also some more time on November, I have it over there, I realized, 28th. So by the end, on November 28th, we know where we have agreement and where we need to keep going, right? We gave a handout in case folks have questions about how else they can engage their constituencies and folks you represent, how you got picked to be in this room, a reminder of what's happening with all the results. If these are questions that have been kind of plaguing you, take some time with that handout, and I'm happy to answer questions at the end. I think with that, though, I've been doing plenty of talking. Let's go ahead and check in. Just like last time, we're going to get every voice in the room, and we're going to pass the microphone to do it. We want you to tell us who you are, if there's an affiliation that you bring, if you're representing a specific group, you can certainly share that. And then, again, just ask you to share what you're missing tonight to be here. I'm a Colorado native. I know the Rockies played earlier today. I think the game is done. I have no idea what happened. So that's what I'm missing. My name's Carrie. I'm your facilitator. I have no affiliation. All right. Where do we want to start? We'll pass the mic from there. Perfect. Caleb. Oh, before I do that, sorry. You can still hold it. We have some folks who weren't able to come last time. Many of them have dutifully watched the video and caught themselves up on the content. And we will just kind of welcome them in the spirit of continuing and are grateful that their voices are in the room now. So, all right, name, affiliation, and what you're missing out on tonight to be here.
My name is Caleb Peterson. I'm a senator of Lane Community College on the student government, and I'm here to address student housing and see what we can do as a Senate.
And what are you missing out on tonight to be here? Like, what would you be doing if you weren't here tonight?
Homework.
Homework. Solid. Go ahead and just pass the mic. We can go to Ronald.
Ron Bevert, I'm the board secretary of the Southwest Hills Neighborhood Association. I'm a retired general contractor, and I am here because I want to be here, so there's nowhere else I want to be.
Not missing a thing. I'm going to go to Dan here.
My name is Dan Straub. I work for a company called Tokati Capital Management. We're a real estate investment and development firm, and I wasn't at the first one. Tonight I'm missing work and or Thursday night football.
Oh, it's so weird having football on Thursday night still. Go ahead.
Dan Hill, I'm with the Arbor South Companies. We're architects, builders, and developers. And just like last meeting, I'm missing my hot tub because my back is really sore tonight.
Ed McMahon, I'm with the Home Builders Association, and I'm missing playing with a 4-year-old and a 2-month-old grandbaby.
Oh.
I'm Ted Koopman, and I'm the chair of Jefferson Westside Neighbors, and I'm part of the group selected by the Neighborhood Leaders Council to represent the neighborhoods here. And I am also, this is my primary thing, I cleared my schedule for tonight. No poker's on Wednesday, so I don't have to worry about that.
Hey everybody, I'm Jacob Fox, Executive Director with Homes for Good, which is Lake County's housing authority. We develop a lot of real estate and help a whole lot of low-income people have a home. And what I'm missing tonight is a team celebration because we just finished rehabbing a property in West Eugene that was built in 1992 and wasn't built very well. And now it's a great home for families and their kids.
I'm Isaac Judd. I'm with the Eugene Realtors and Hearthstone Real Estate and Housing Policy Board for Eugene. And let's see, I'm missing, I guess, just a downtime without meetings. So, but I'm really happy to be here, and it's a great work that you guys are doing.
Downtime without meetings.
Yeah. My name is Tiffany Edwards. I am with the Eugene Chamber of Commerce. I'm also on the Planning Commission. I think that's another reason I'm here. And this is my 4th evening meeting this week. Last night was my anniversary and I was at a meeting, so it's just kind of par for the course for me this week. So I think if I weren't here, I'd probably just still be unpacking. My family just moved and it's been taking forever to unpack.
My name is Ty Bruce Zimmerman. I'm the co-chair of the Active Bethel Citizens Neighborhood Association. I'm also on the Eugene Budget Committee. And I'm missing time at home with my wife. It's only my 3rd meeting this week, but still, she'd prefer I was home. Also, the dog needs exercise, so I'm not running him around.
We're going to start a 12-step program for meetings.
Betsy Schultz, Government Affairs Director for the Eugene Association of Realtors, and I'm missing taking some clients around my flower farm.
I'm Dan Neal. I started a company called Paradigm Properties that began by doing student housing here around the University of Oregon, and since then it's broadened into market rate housing in places like Portland and Bend, and now we're developing senior care communities elsewhere. And I am keenly interested in this issue, otherwise I wouldn't be here, because I, like all of you, I'd like to be home having a nice meal, drinking a bottle of wine. And
I like how you went to a bottle of wine. Not a glass, having a bottle of wine. I'm just teasing.
We can bring wine? Oh, wish I'd known.
Thanks, Dan. Appreciate
Thanks.
it.
Hi, I'm Eliza Kaczynski. I'm with WeCan, the Walkable Eugene Citizen Advisory Network, and I'm also on the budget committee for the city. And I would probably be doing jigsaw puzzles and so forth with my husband.
Nice.
If I weren't here.
Thanks, Eliza.
My name is Roman Anderson. I'm with Kimball Construction, general contractor, build houses. If I wasn't here, I'd be at the gym working out some energy from a busy day.
My name is Amy Bradbury and I'm with the City of Eugene, and I would just be spending time with my husband if I wasn't here.
Thanks, Amy.
My name is Norton Cabell. I chair the Intergovernmental Housing Policy Board. I'm also a private market landlord. I'm retired. I'd be home reading a book.
Nice.
I'm Deborah Daly, and I am the Homeless Student Liaison from the Eugene 4J School District. And I carved out this time, so I wouldn't miss a thing.
Lisa Fragala, I'm a 2nd grade teacher at Adams Elementary, and I'm also on the City of Eugene Planning Commission. Same as Deborah, I carved out this time, so I'm not missing anything.
I'm Amy Walsh, and I manage a nonprofit here, and I am here from the Human Rights Commission, and I have an event tomorrow night, or I'd be packaging silent auction items.
Oh, nice. Thank you, Amy.
I'm Terry Harding with the City of Eugene's Planning and Development Department, and I think I'm missing a rousing game of dominoes with my family and in-laws this evening.
Hi, I'm Claudia Orozco, and I'm a member of the Latino Network Professionals, and I am a real estate professional as well, and I am missing watching the Smurfs with my son.
Smurfs? I didn't know Smurfs were still on TV. Netflix. Perfect.
I'm Carolyn Jacobs. I'm a board member for the South University neighborhood. I'm also here to represent Neighborhood Leaders Council. Yeah, I carved out tonight too. I'd probably be doing dinner, reading, Sudoku, walking, one of those.
Hello, I'm Carmel Perez Snyder. I'm with AARP Oregon, and if I weren't here, it's actually what I'm going to be doing after I leave here, is I'd be shopping for more apples, oranges, toiletries that we're giving out tomorrow to homeless veterans at the stand down. So, thank you.
My name is Regina Perry, and I am a legal secretary and receptionist at Legal Aid, and I would be missing dinner with my sons right now.
Chris Parra, Superintendent, Bethel School District, and if I were not here, I would currently be on a manufacturing tour.
Oh.
I'm Ann Delaney. I'm an architect here in town. I focus on affordable housing, and I'm seeing dinner with friends from out of town.
I'm Mark Mixis. I have a real estate development consulting firm, D. Chase Mixis. I'm a licensed architect, and I'd be missing family time.
Susan Ban with Shelter Care, and we provide housing for populations with special needs and try to keep families in housing. And all the ingredients for fish tacos are on the counter, and we'll see when I get home if the spouse actually makes it.
I'm Pat Hawken. I'm representing the League of Women Voters here, and the League has had an interest for many, many years in the affordable housing for all income levels. And if I were home, I'd be sitting on my patio.
I'm Emily Ryman from NEDCO. NEDCO is an affordable housing and asset building and neighborhood economic development agency. In the affordable housing world, we focus primarily on first-time home ownership for low-income families. And I spent the day at an excellent manufactured housing conference down in Ashland that NOAA was putting on today. And I had to leave early to drive hastily back here for this meeting. So I'm missing a post-conference dinner with a bunch of the organizers.
Thanks for being here. So checking with the audience members, we're so glad you're here. There are guidelines to govern your behavior over there. Please be good. I don't want to have to come sit with you to make you, no, I'm just teasing. If you are city staff, City of Eugene staff, go ahead and raise your hand. Awesome. These folks are here to be a resource for us tonight, but they're also just really interested in the process. And if you are a Eugene resident and just care, awesome. Any non-Eugene residents that are non-city staff? I always wonder if people that like live in Springfield but would really like to live here, like get wind of this and would come to it. Just curious. Awesome. We have our fantastic volunteer videographer here. I don't know if y'all know this, but the video from last time was online, edited and ready to go before I had even finished processing the photographs from last time. So super big thanks for that. Really appreciate it. And that video has been viewed a whole bunch of times for folks that weren't able to attend a meeting, whether they are on the task force or working group or just concerned citizens. If you are part of the Witness Protection Program or otherwise have concerns with being taped, please visit with Jason in the front here, and we can make accommodations to make sure that you feel comfortable. All right, awesome. So we did a lot of work last time. Here's the plan for this time. We're spending this time getting grounded, reminding ourselves of who we are and what we're here to do. We have talked about, I jumped ahead already. We are reminding ourselves of the cycle that we're using, how we're marching through these steps and where we're going. Our next step is going to be finishing the story, including insights from last time. So reminding ourselves of what we remember from that story of last time, challenges to increasing the supply, really that developer and builder mindset that understands some of the things that other folks may not know about why you can't just build your way out of this problem. Part of it, but not all of it. And the last part in the story is what we love about Eugene, right? What is it that makes this such a great place to live? That may also drive up housing prices, right? But what is it that we want to make sure we protect when we think about a solution many solutions going forward? Then we'll jump into identifying interests, brainstorming options, and identifying questions, requesting info about some of those options. There might be some unfamiliar things and some dense options that come up, and an opportunity for you to identify some questions so we can do some research and bring data back to the team. We will close and wrap up and be out the door by 8:30. Any questions on our agenda? All right, I don't usually get to do this so early in a meeting, but I'm gonna cross off the things that are already done. We are on a tight schedule tonight. I will be clipping you all along quickly, but I also know that each of these pieces is really important, so we don't want to gloss over them or not do them justice. But take a second. You all should have gotten handouts that are photos of the notes from last time. I know some of you have just been poring over these. No, I'm just teasing. I had a chance to look back through them today, and I was struck with the quality of storytelling and just the depth of information that was shared. If you remember, at the end, one of the pieces of the story was the additional impacts to housing affordability. You worked with a partner and wrote ideas on Post-it notes. I compiled those using all of the deciphering I could with some of the handwriting I saw, it's okay, and compiled them up here. So those, if these sheets look unfamiliar, that's where those came from. Okay, so I read those off at the end from the Post-it notes, and I just put them here for the official record. In just a second, I'm going to have you stand up and find somebody new to talk to. How many of you, by the way, sat with somebody new tonight? Yeah! High five those new people around you and say, you're awesome, you're awesome, you're awesome. How many of you are sitting by the same dude from last time? Just teasing. Just teasing. I'm going to have you stand up and find somebody new to talk to. I'll give you some instructions about that. If you weren't here last time, but you had a chance to kind of look over the notes, feel free to fully participate. If you weren't here last time and you didn't have a chance to look over things, you get to play the listening role first. All right. But in your stand-up meeting, I want you to talk about what kind of stood out from you. You can't rehash the whole story. We had pages and pages and pages, right? But if there was something that really stood out to you or another idea that has come up, just talk about that with your partner. All right. I'll give you about 5 minutes. Awesome. Real fast, high five for a partner and say, I'm so glad I found you. All right, here's what I'm going to ask you to do. We're going to share out, but I want to keep you standing. So folks that are in the middle, if you can just kind of push out to the edges a little bit. You don't have to go too far, but just our folks that are in the middle. I have a fancy system here with a coffee cup and random drawing. I believe that whoever gets called is going to have a brilliant idea to say. And if you get called, you're not off the hook, because you might be in here twice. 3C. Who is 3C? Go for it. Give us an idea. Oh, something that stood out from you last time. Oh, and hang on, our microphone runners are coming.
My partner and I discussed how many multifaceted problems there are to solving this problem, of how there isn't just one simple silver bullet to solve the other problem.
Right.
And the other thing that I reminded myself, but also my partner, is how we're viewing this through our lens of what we would do or what our challenges would be, but not necessarily the challenges of other people who might be more negatively experiencing this problem.
Excellent, excellent. So it's a little bit of a game of whack-a-mole, right? Where with wicked problems, you fix one thing and it creates another problem somewhere else, right? And then a part of that too is we all view it from our own perspective, but we're aware of those other perspectives and ways other people might view it.
That's a great summary.
You said it best first, don't you worry. You gave me all the ideas. Thank you. How about 2E? Oh, this is a great time, by the way. you can steal others' ideas. You don't have to share your own when I call on you. There's no shame in saying what your partner said or whatever just sounds good to you. 2E. There we go.
I think very similarly, we were talking about the complexity of the problem and just really fully understanding the shifts in how properties are torn down and what's built in its place, and then come along and what's taken, just kind of how how housing has changed over the years and neighborhoods change, and really how complex that is, and space and size, and just it is a very complex challenge.
Nice. Good to think about that historical context of it too, that it's not just like one moment in time, but a whole history that's built to this. Yeah, good, excellent, thank you. How about 6C? Whoa!
Our corner over here. So I watched it on YouTube because I wasn't here, and the thing that stuck out for me, and we discussed this, was I really found it interesting that there were so many different perspectives, because everyone comes from a different place when we're talking about this issue, and that when in listening and having someone describe something that they would address, would like to address, you realize it's like you pull one lever and you create a new problem over here, and so it's like there's this cause and effect that's related to a lot of concerns that everybody has around the topic of housing in general.
Excellent. I often do an activity with folks at this point when you have people sit back to back and you have them each describe the room, right? You can imagine. So somebody facing this way sees this room completely differently from somebody facing this way. Who's right? They both are, right? They both are. Whose opinion should be valued? Both. What if they disagree? Is one of them lying? Is one of them cheating? Is somebody like a paid saboteur who's just trying to ruin Eugene? No, right? We just view it differently, right? And with these wicked problems, we have to find the solutions that balance all of those things in a way that reflects our community values as best we can, right? So we're dealing with all those really hard tensions and knowing that we're both right, we're all right? And we have to help each other get more of what we all need, right, to solve the problem. Excellent. All right, one more, 5D. If it's somebody else over here. Oh, it is over there. Oh, it's unbelievable. I'd be as random as I can, and all you're standing here.
Oh, brother, you shouldn't have given me the mic.
Quick, what stood out from last time?
Just sharing with my friend Mark here. One of the things that I took away from the last meeting, which wasn't really anything about some of that discussion we had, but it's something that I think is important to state, is that we want to make sure that we come away with some actual actions in this group, and not just talk more. Eugene is famous for talking and talking and talking and talking, and I've sat on committees for hundreds, if not thousands of hours, and it would be really great to actually see some action come out of this.
Awesome. Anybody else agree that they want to see something done? Totally. We all agreed on something. Unanimous agreement that we need action. I'm going to put that on the list. Thank you. Awesome. We're going to mix up a bunch of times tonight. I'll call on you by letters and things this way. It's not to label you or pigeonhole you or whatever. It's just a random way for me to mix you up a lot of ways. Thank your partner. Head back to your seat, and I'm going to tell you about what our next steps are. So we could continue to talk for days about what these challenges look like, how it impacts people in ways that we don't even realize, et cetera, et cetera. However, we're going to move on to one of our next chunks now, which is, why is it so hard to increase supply? What are the barriers that make it difficult to make more housing available that's affordable? Okay, we touched on many of those issues last time. Oh, I forgot. Citizen engagement is a wicked problem. If you're really into the nuts and bolts of who's in the room and why and how, don't you worry. Citizen engagement itself is a wicked problem, and we want all these things and we're balancing them. So we can talk about that more on the break. It's one of my pet passions. But for now, we got to move on to the other stuff. These challenges to increasing supply are not my brilliant ideas. They're things that came up in the midst of telling the story last time. I'm going to review them because when we get into small groups in a second, we don't need to rehash all of these. These are true, we acknowledge them, they are real, and we don't need to keep going on these ones if it's been said. First one, some builders are still catching up from the housing crash. We know that historical context, there was this lag, the recession is still having an impact. To get a loan, I put construction loan, but I really think for any sort of investment property, you have to demonstrate strong financial returns or put up more capital. So banks aren't going to lend without a project looking profitable, right? It needs to pencil out. Codes and zoning limit the types of housing that can be built. We have regulations around building, and that limits some of the type of housing that can be built. Many builders calculate that the cost of the land should be about 25% of the end cost. Local land prices are high, so you have to build a more expensive home, so the 25% figure works out. There are some fixed costs in building that are roughly the same for all construction. So for example, SDC, permit fees, etc. What does SDC stand for? Systems Development Charges. Thank you. Which is like water and sewer, etc. Okay, so like what? There's a bunch of things. Water, sewer, okay, electricity, all those different things. So it doesn't matter if you're building a tiny house or a larger house, some of those costs are relatively fixed. So therefore, some of those costs are high. We talked about last time, $18,000 to $20,000 maybe for a moderate home, right? And so whether you're making it aiming for an affordable unit or a larger, more expensive home, those fixed costs are roughly going to be the same. I may not totally do these things justice, but if we get the gist of it, okay. Creating lower cost housing doesn't necessarily cost much less than more expensive housing types. So there's little incentive, financial incentive in that way to build lower cost housing units, okay. Ooh. And one more. In Eugene, there's little zoning that allows for more dense or more diverse housing options. So we talked about some of the code and how that restricts options. This is a kind of echoing of that. There's a lot of limitations in that. So you can't have as many dense options or diverse options. Current code. Any questions about what's there now? Hi, Karin. Do you want to check in real fast? Does anybody else just join us? I just noticed a new face in the crowd, sorry. Karin, why don't you check in real fast, and then I'm looking to see if anybody else is new. And then we'll get into our groups. Go ahead. Here's your cheat sheet. Name, affiliation, and what you're missing to be here.
Hi everyone. I'm a local architect and urban designer and the project lead for the Better Housing Together initiative, which is about 45 local businesses and organizations working on housing affordability, diversity, and supply to try to address the housing crisis. What I'm missing, or where I was, and thank you for accepting me late, was teaching at the University of Oregon in the School of Architecture.
Awesome, thank you. If other folks come in late and I miss them, please point them out so I can welcome them to the group. All right, so any questions about the existing information up here? Or anything that I got wrong in my facilitator shorthanding of anything? All right, so there are more challenges. There are other things out there. Now, if you are like me, and you don't know a ton of information about this stuff, this next phase might be more of a listening activity for you, and that's okay. You can ask lots of questions, right? I encourage you to say, well, wait, what does that mean? You used all these acronyms. Explain to me what that actually looks like, right? And the folks that are really familiar with this stuff are gonna fill you in a little bit more. All right, so it's okay in this one if you feel like you're listening far more than you're contributing ideas. That's to be expected. We need to hear from our folks that are looking at the one wall that says this is hard to just fix, right? You have numbers, I have to double check, on your name tags. You are going to find the people that have your same number. It's going to be easy this time because The number 1s are all going to go back there. Don't start moving yet. The number 2s are going to come over here. You might have to clear out some of the chairs and stuff. Number 3s will be up here. I will take this paper off. Number 4s will be over here. Number 5s are over by this exit. And number 6s are going to come here. When you get there, you're going to play a rapid game of who has the nicest handwriting. Don't assume it's the women. It might be, but don't assume. Okay? That person is going to be your recorder for your group. I'll bring markers around, and that person is going to write down ideas as you go. Okay? Everybody else is going to contribute what they know, what they've heard, questions they have, whatever else, and your recorder can participate as well, but is going to record those ideas for you. If you would like to go pull a city staff member in to be your recorder, you can do that. Just don't waste a bunch of time trying to get a marker writer. All right? So the question is, why is it hard? What are the challenges to increasing supply? And thinking again, with the if the solution is build our way out of it, right? What are the challenges that make that difficult? All right? Everybody know where you're going? Everybody know what you're doing when you get there? All right, I will cue you when you're starting to run out of time, but I think you should be good. Go ahead and find your new people, and I'll bring around markers. Got one group ready, 2 groups are ready. Stay at your spots, don't go anywhere. Ooh. Stay at your spots. Oh, yeah, please. I've got 3 groups that look ready. Awesome. Raise your hand if you think your number group, whatever it is probably the smartest group in the room. If your friends aren't raising your hands, you should elbow. No, I'm just teasing. Recorders. You have just done a valiant job of writing down all this stuff. Can we give them a hand? Yes, thank you. Recorders, you have an opportunity now to think about who in your group, because you just spent a lot of time listening to them, who in your group will be able to succinctly read through your list without giving us the entire discussion, right? Who could be a good spokesperson for your group? You could anoint them with a marker or just make eye contact, but you need to have a spokesperson for your group. We're going to quickly just do a tour. I suspect we're going to have some overlap, but I think that we might also have some novel ideas. Lindsay, we're going to start back here with number 1.
Yeah, so we talked first about how expensive it is and drilled down a little on a few reasons why. Land prices being a lot higher than they used to be. We had the number, used to be about $25 a square foot, and now it's more around $80.
For the land itself?
For the land itself in the downtown area. Also, labor costs are up, and tariffs, and a variety of other factors. Those were the drill downs on it being more expensive right now. We talked about neighborhood resistance to infill and the amount of appeal rights that there are for planning decisions. We talked about challenging land use laws, how there might be a bit of a disconnect between the intent of code and the actual outcomes, and reputation as well of Eugene as being a difficult place to build that drives some developers away. We also talked about there maybe not being as much creativity as we need to find new housing types that might better actually meet the need of the communities. We talked about the length of the construction life cycle being a challenge.
I'm going to pause you on that one. The length of the construction life cycle, like how long it takes to actually go from breaking ground to a certificate of occupancy.
Yeah, so from the pre-development to the construction, how long it actually takes to build something, and so trying to increase supply, but by the time you start a project based on the needs you think you're trying to meet, by the time you build it, those needs might have changed.
Got it, thank you.
Incomes being pretty low in this community is another challenge. And then we mentioned a lack of clear leadership on the city council, really emphasizing this as a top focus.
Okay, so maybe just hasn't been seen as a priority as much until now. Excellent. Give this group a little quick round of applause. How many of you have ideas that are the same as what they have? If you do, number 2 group, you're on the spot, but the rest of you, go ahead and just put a little check mark by them. We don't need to hear that same idea 400 times. Okay, just do your check marks and say, yeah, great minds think alike. And so do ours. How many of you have land is expensive? Totally. Good. So it's okay if they stole most of your good ideas. Great minds do think alike. So hopefully there's still a couple novel ones by the time we get all the way around. All right, once you've got those crossed off, and it doesn't have to be perfect, let's turn our attention to group number 2.
Okay, I've scratched off many of these. Good thinking, group number 1. We do have a couple that they didn't, however, and I don't mean to be picking on the city, but the planning department narrowly interprets codes. So if you come to them with a proposal that you think fits within the existing code, they may disagree. And then some of the details of the building project itself, they layer on new stuff, which adds to the cost of construction and makes it increasingly difficult to have what begins as a marginal project financially transforms into one that's just impossible and no-go. Okay. Codes also discourage innovation. There are some new building types. Tiny houses was a successful project, but the city staff kind of did somersaults in order to make that happen, and having to repeat that process with other housing innovation types is you're fighting new battles all the time. And I know that there's part of the city culture in city government that really supports these ideas that we're talking about today, but the people who are at the front lines of that feel like they're really bound by things that don't make it any easier. Really, they so often make it harder, and so finding a way to better connect our desires with what's happening at the front lines would be a good direction to go. And also, Carol mentioned the trilemma. Do you want to elaborate on the trilemma?
Actually, I think I might have even mentioned it at the last meeting, but
hold it close.
There's sort of 3 points. If you have, there's housing, there's the economy, and there's the location. You can look at any city and judge kind of those things. One of them is always going to lose, and I won't take time to explain it, but for Eugene, we have great location, we have a good economy. Housing's going to be on the losing end, and it is. And yeah, it's not possible for city council to change that trilemma around.
Nor would you necessarily want them to. I think there's variable affordable housing in places nobody wants to live, right? Because there's no jobs, or it's a terrible environment in other ways, right? So that's a trade-off, that we all want to live in a great place with a thriving economy.
One will always suffer.
Good, thank you. Awesome. Round of applause for group 2. It sounds like a lot of focus there on code and the ways that those processes are working or not. So the bummer news is some of those things may feel really entrenched. The good news is there's this energy now around making it better, right? So that's an exciting thing. It's nice when the solutions are also within the house of where the problems sometimes are coming from. So that's exciting. All right, group 3.
Okay, good news is that we agree on a lot of the same stuff. So the bad news is, I think, just my opinion here is that most of the problems we've identified so far are like 20-year problems, right? So changing the code is very hard. That being said, about a month ago I did go up to the Building Codes Division up in Salem, and I gave my testimony to advocate for better housing codes. There was 3 people in that meeting, so it would laws, specifically as they relate to condominiums and the potential for lawsuits, makes the financial return on those very sketchy, right? So
Colorado has that same problem.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm not sure how to eliminate that. We talked about the private market. We talked about opportunity costs. So as a home builder myself, if I can make a whole bunch of money by building a big house out in the woods, I'm going to do that, even if I can make a profit on building a small house. So it's just simply not fair to ask the building community to shoulder the burden of building low profit houses.
Okay.
Okay, we talked about land. Materials are also going up. The cost of materials has about doubled in the last several years. We talked about the limited supply of skilled trades as we focus more on people being in college. We talked about a single family home bias in the code book, which other people have talked about. It's really geared towards building single family homes. We talked about commercial uses on residential and specifically Airbnb. So people renting out their houses.
I'm staying in a hotel this time, y'all. I felt so guilty last time Airbnb-ing in. I'm in a hotel.
That's what we talked about.
Brilliant. Thank you. Round of applause for group number 3. It's an interesting nuance thinking about the labor market, right? That as we're encouraging more and more people to go to college, which is great, you have less and less people maybe in the trades, right? And are needing to pay more and more to incentivize that, which increases the cost. Awesome for those people making more money, we hope, and also a challenge when you're trying to keep your costs low for the housing. Excellent. All right, group number 4.
Group number 4. I just have to say one thing because I think it's really important to the time that we're spending together. We have sent extraordinary supercomputers past Pluto and out into the universe far beyond us. I'm certain that we can adjust a Word document that is our zoning code. I'm certain that we can do it. I'm not sure about the agreement to what we will change, but I am absolutely certain that that is not the greatest challenge that humanity is facing. We can do this, people. It's in our power. Okay, that was, sorry, one soapbox moment.
Who gave you the microphone? I'm just kidding. Please, I love it.
We have to work on these problems. They will only get worse. So we talked about land supply, of course.
What is UGB? Sorry.
So urban growth boundary.
Thank you.
Covered that maybe in the first 2 groups. But we talked about, was brought up that we have a lot of existing urban land that is developed already with relative low intensity. And people often say, like, why can't all those 1-story buildings turn into 10-story buildings or 5-story buildings? You know, why is that so hard? And it's an economic challenge that the redevelopment costs to demolish an existing building that's returning a rent on something and then add all of that cost to new development is a challenge. So we have an existing kind of low-rise development pattern that we have to contend with. It makes redevelopment hard. The current land use pattern is low intensity, and looking at our residential lands and percentages of lands, we don't have the historic mid-density residential that other cities often reference as their missing middle housing or some of their historic housing. We just didn't really grow up in that time, and a lot of that housing that we did have, we demolished in the mid-century with urban renewal in downtown. So we're missing some pieces that we have to put back. We also talked about that the buildings that we replaced that housing with had much higher parking counts and site utilization assigned to car storage. So you look at an example, we talked about the Wilder apartment building, which is that 3-story brick building near 13th and High next to Full City. Nothing special, just a fabric building, quite special in Eugene because there's not many of them. There's not a single parking space assigned to the tenants of that building, and I think there are 16 or 18 units there. I'm not sure. But we do things differently now, and that's a barrier to supply because we spend half the land we do have holding cars. Insufficient funds for affordable housing, so a barrier to affordable housing, capital A, capital H, just being the funding stream to deliver below market rate units, both capital and operating cost. And then the last 3 points kind of connected. One, that there's a real need for more accurate data and research to inform our decisions and to give ourselves a sense of our field position and what we have been incentivizing or how we would like to change. And that compounding that, in the absence of good information, there's a lot of anxiety and fear and in some cases misinformation about what is proposed. And we talked about one particular example where a project that was proposed in Bethel, neighbors were told it was going to submarine their property values, and that isn't true. But it would be scary if someone told you that. A simpler process is needed to develop more affordable housing units, smaller housing units. We need to find a path in our code that allows for that to happen more directly and without a lot of added cost. And then, this probably gets to the soapbox at the beginning, that there's a real fear about changing regulatory structures and the zoning codes we have. So that's
all right. Round of applause for number 4. Thank you. These guys took an interesting nuance, and when you think about land, all of you identified land and land being scarce as a piece of it. But when we think about what land is being used for, if it's 1-story single-family house, if it's parking, if it's taller building, right? All of those things. Land is a fixed resource. There's only so much of it, and the ways that you use it and the decisions you make around that matter for how many people can live there. So good. All right, number 5.
All right, getting to go towards the end means
I know
that we've
it's
already done a lot of
so
things.
hard. You're
So
brilliant.
we've got
We
things
still think
like
you're brilliant.
Zoning and appeals and construction costs around there. Transportation was one that we talked about. Lack of adequate and available infrastructure. A lack of education on the homeownership, renting, and process surrounding buying a house or renting a house, including language barriers.
Okay.
Lack of understanding for the financial side of building, influx of population, and financial risk to building. I don't know if we did that one already.
The financial risk. Okay, that makes sense. That's the it has to pencil out that it's going to be a financially viable option. Can you speak more on the transportation side?
That if the place where you're built, that transportation is part of housing affordability, that if you have to have 3 cars to live where your house is, then that's going to be a more expensive option that's going to go into your costs. And a lot of the places where land is available and the transportation infrastructure that is there doesn't support less expensive transportation options.
Got it. So if there's not easy access to public transport, you're dependent on a car, which means you have to take up the parking spaces, which limits then all kinds of other things.
Yeah.
Okay, good, excellent. Round of applause. Excellent, thank you very much. Anytime I forget that acknowledgement, somebody always starts clapping and it helps me, thank you. All right, poor group number 6. You all have come up with so many ideas. If they have something novel, we are going to bow down for their creativity, because that is a hard spot to be in. Go for it.
Actually, we have one thing that is different.
I love it.
Is that the most desirable areas lack supply, and by most desirable we mean places that are walkable and urban and close to lots of things. So there isn't a lot of supply of bare land in those areas.
Okay, excellent. So they have check marks all over theirs because you all shared those ideas first, but that desirability and the lack of empty space in that desirability, or limited empty space, or codes that limit how you can use the space that is there, make that really tricky. Excellent. Impressive. After all that, still come up with a new idea. Well done. Well done. Awesome. Is there anything that we missed? This is a tremendous list. Is there anything that we just still haven't touched on that makes, I know I've been in groups before where I've heard people say, well, if those greedy developers would just get off their blah, 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 right? So what are we missing that helps us understand from the building side, from the supply side? What else are we missing that goes, oh, okay, it's not that easy? One more.
Well, I'm going to touch on one, the lack of affordable land. I know it's been mentioned, but I want to just present some of the really big obstacles. We're mandated by the state to have a 20-year land supply. And as a developer, we look at lots of properties, and this, I think we talked about it a little bit last time, but I can't stress this enough. So much of that land supply that's supposedly available, if you look at it and you look at the obstacles that are there, the lack of available infrastructure, soils problems, tree issues, neighborhood groups. If you've got sewer that's 400 feet away and it costs you $500,000 to bring that sewer to that property, then that becomes an undevelopable piece of property. No developer is going to buy it and develop it because there's no financial reason to do that. So we have this kind of perception that we have all this available land within our urban growth boundary that really truly isn't developable.
Excellent.
I think this is a big deal.
Thank you for that. I've heard that in terms of mining before. We're familiar with it for oil, but I think I've heard the same for sand, that the cheap stuff we've already taken, so now the stuff that's left to extract is really expensive or in bad locations, right? So same thing, the easy to build on land, the stuff that is connected with the infrastructure has already been done. So you're expending a lot more cost to take advantage of that same resource.
All those costs, by the way, are backs of the development.
Yep. Okay, so they have to assume that it gets rolled into the cost, right? I know we were hearing a lot about the tariffs and the trade war right now with the China trade shenanigans, and in the same way, all those costs get rolled in, right? They're passed on to the consumer or have to get incorporated in some way. Good. Do you have another one?
Yeah, I was going to say challenges with reuse and rehabilitation or conversion of use, that there are all kinds of things that make it really hard to say, okay, we have this existing building, can we use it in a different way? Can we use it in a better way? Can we expand it and use it in a different way?
Good.
Where you're taking advantage of something that's already there and providing more housing within the same building.
Excellent. I've worked with school districts before where they're trying to pass a bond to build a new school, and they say, this empty school is right there, and it's full of asbestos, right? So the complexities of it, you can't just rehab a building, and it's the cost of trying to use.
Not even just rehabbing it from a construction standpoint, but also from you're just not allowed.
Right, absolutely, thank you. Anything else that we missed in terms of why it's so hard to increase supply? Just a couple more ideas and then we're gonna move on.
So last time I was here, I met somebody from the city of Eugene who's actually in charge of giving out grants to build affordable housing.
Isn't that nice?
It is nice, yeah. She talked to me about how we don't have to pay SDC fees when we're building accessory dwelling units, and I was like, send me some information. And she sent it to me, and it's 300 pages long. And I read the first half of the first page, and I said, I'm not going to do this.
Okay, so the length, the sheer length of some of these things is tricky.
Yeah, we need to get this down to like brochure length for builders. All right? I didn't get into
brochures for builders.
I wanted to read 300 pages of documents.
Excellent. So we've talked about the complexity of these issues. We've talked about the complexity of these issues. Trying to codify and make it fair and clear and everything else sometimes has gone in the far extreme, that in all of that clarity you lose sight of some things. There was a hint here, and then I'll go there.
One thing, and I think it's a lot of, hopefully why we're here, is that everybody's kind of in a defensive crouch against everybody else.
Oh, no. Did you hear Karin? We're going to solve it.
No, well, yeah, man, this is great. No, this is why I'm here. If I didn't think we were going to get anything done, I wouldn't be here. I don't have the time. But that idea, that reactiveness and that adversarial standpoint as a chair of a neighborhood association with a well-deserved reputation, good and bad, is that the idea of we really don't have a cooperative process. Well, we do have a cooperative process in terms of being able to find and do opportunity siting within neighborhoods, but that cooperative process to get the neighbors on side in terms of getting things done, which we've done very successfully in Jefferson West Side. And we've got some of the densest, most diverse housing and a high number of renters in the city. So it can be done and it can be livable.
So it sounds like acknowledging some of the adversarial nature of some of these things. I think the first group kind of spoke to some of the challenges in addressing making some of the changes. So how we're able to get people on board and be creative and addressing the fear that's sometimes there. Excellent, thank you. Take two more, Karin, and then I saw a hand here.
It's just building a bit on what Rowan introduced, and that if we're clear about the objectives we're trying to accomplish and the goals that we're setting with this work related to increasing affordability, and I'm forgetting the council language, but diversity and accessibility, I think, then it stands to reason that we could pretty easily through analysis identify what we're doing right now that repels those things, and then take some steps to remove process barriers or improve process barriers or address them in some way, and then also look at the cost structure and try to do real work on why it costs so much to deliver units. And I think it should be that simple. It should be like brochures for the whole community, not just for builders.
Good. So again, getting back to the idea of clarity, simplicity, getting clear about the costs and why those costs are what they are. A piece of the story that we might need to get later is why are some of these things so expensive, right? If some of the fees are the SDC, got a new acronym, why some of those things cost what they do, etc. All right, last point, and then we're going to move on.
Well, I guess one thought I had is that cities, either elected officials or city leadership, and not just the city of Eugene, city of Springfield, Lake County, etc., could use powers of eminent domain to take property from folks, pay them fair market value, and use that tool in low density areas, and basically buy property to build high density near transportation corridors. So it's our city's using all the tools that they have to actually increase density and opportunity.
Good. So what I'm hearing is there's some unused tactics that could be used. Did anybody have a little itch when you heard eminent domain that was like, right? There are other tools that could be used, and if it were so simple, gosh, it would have been done, right? So, but there are other tools that we could use and other ways that we can simplify things, and it's good to keep them all in mind. Excellent. High five the people around you and say, we did amazing work. All right, we have one more step before we go on break. Head back to your seat. We're going to do one last step, and then we're going to go on a quick break. Thank you. Oh yeah, if you have markers, if they could migrate their way back here, your recorders did great work. I'm going to recruit some of you. Thank you. You will find that you have sticky notes at your spot. You stop over there, thank you. Perfect. You've got the Bronco colors. You have sticky notes at your spot. This is going to be another lightning round of idea generation. I would encourage you to work with a pair or group of 3 if you're in 3s at your table. This last phase is, what do we love about Eugene? When we think about why this is such a wonderful place to live, that everybody wants to live here and it messes up the market, what is it that we love that makes this place so special? Now, you could go on and on and on and on and on. There are a limited supply of Post-it notes, okay? So pick your favorites, kind of talk through it and put those best ideas on your Post-it notes. If anything, we are 5 minutes ahead, which makes me so happy. Some groups blow up my agenda within the first 5 minutes, and you all are not doing that, so thank you. We are going to get a review of what we love about Eugene. I have diligent folks over here working on some of the big picture categories. In my cursory review, the first answer I saw was beer and bud. And then the next one that caught my attention was hippies. I love Eugene. This is a diverse community with many, many, many facets. I know when I first started coming down here for school, I very quickly learned of the slug queen tradition. I was like, what on earth? I started graduate school and the professionals I was working with were talking about their slug queen being crowned. I said, what kind of town is this? It's a special one, right? Really, really special one. So as they are sorting, I'm going to start kind of giving a high-level view. One big category is schools. Love the schools, schools and neighborhoods, neighborhood school. Solid. Food and culture, local art organizations, cultural arts, beer and bud, great food. I love that beer and bud went into food and culture. Restaurants, affordable restaurants, beer. You all have food trucks. I mean, it's not Portland level food trucks, but you have food trucks. Does it say food shed? Is that a thing? Food shed is a thing. What is a food shed?
Amazing place. We have food everywhere.
I started reading about the locavore diet and like the 100-mile diet or something a long time ago, and I was living in western Colorado. I was like, okay, so beef and peaches, I'm set. And then we moved to Oregon. I was like, it's so easy. All right, civic and engineering? Civic engagement. Open and accessible government, public involvement opportunities for the community to evolve, civic mindedness, easy to get civically involved. Oddities. That's a cop-out. I'm just teasing. Can we have a round of applause for our sorters up here? Well done, well done. I'm like leering over their shoulders as they're trying to wrap it up. All right, let's keep going. Size, it's just the right size. Not too crowded, not too small, not too big either, I suppose. Size matters, population size of the community. Vibrant business community is fit in with that. Proximity, you're never that far from where you're going. Accessible size, not too much traffic, but lots of amenities. Lots of plus ones on that one. Geographic location, I'm gonna get to the oddities last. The people, demographic diversity, hippies, compassion for people with low incomes. It's a community with heart. A haven for people who are looking for help because of the amazing social services. What do you think? This freeway? Friendly? Friendly. I didn't think it was freeway with people. Friendly, interesting people, the pace of life, compassionate environment. We're a caring community. Community's values align with mine. Okay. Sustainability, agriculture, local food, grown and available, sustainability, riverfront and urban activity, eco-friendly. UGB, the preservation of nature, that's the urban growth boundary, in case you're still catching up on your acronyms with me. So the urban to rural transition, there's less sprawly, it's less sprawly, doesn't sprawl, that represents the natural location, and that represents the natural location in the farmland and the preservation of farms and forest. All right, then we have a whole bunch around nature and recreation. Water resources, nature, clean air and water, parks, trees, rivers, outdoor beauty, natural beauty. How beautiful it is. This is a big one, y'all. Great climate, good for roses. Oh, that's nice. Great climate, mild climate, so much recreation right outside your door. Good dog town, trees and trails and tails. River mill race, parks and recreation. What's the mill race? I thought it was a running race. Got it. The outdoors, trees, ridgeline trail and river access, parks and open spaces, access to active open spaces, outdoor recreation, buttes, Prez Trail? Prees Trail, I should know that. Prees Trail and accessible to outdoor activities. All right, then we have the university town. This is separate from schools, focused on the universities. U of O and LCC, college town, university town, U of O go Ducks. I love my Ducks. Good university, University of Oregon, college town, U of O. Good. So getting both U of O and LCC in there and how those are such a vibrant part of the community. And the oddities. Are you dying to know what they are? The cool development that's happened and is coming, eWeb, River, 5th Street. So ways that areas are being redeveloped or, okay. Downtown Vitality, Springfield. Why do we love Eugene? Is that Springfield because it's not Springfield or because thank goodness there's always Springfield? If we need it, we can always go there. All right. It's better than the alternatives. I don't know. It's the best thing going, better than the all right. And the quality of life is high. High like beer and bud or awesome. It's fun to kind of reflect on that. Thank you very much for your all sorting again. Appreciate it. It's fun to kind of reflect on those things of what's so special, right? And there's some of those things that are kind of intangible, right? And others that like, as soon as I said a word or a place, that y'all probably went, yeah, that's a good one, right? Something that's really special. Something's really special. I see just number-wise that nature and recreation is a big one, right? So when we're coming to thinking about options and things, thinking about how we really keep that nature and recreation, right? That's so important to people and, right, all of these other things that are so important to us. Or how do we make sure that that nature and recreation isn't only available for a select few, right? And it becomes a very exclusive community, but that it's a place to belong and enjoy the nature and recreation for everybody, right? Excellent, excellent. So this brings us into our next phase, which is, if you're keeping track, we're gonna start talking about interests. So we're not done with the story because we will go back and fill in pieces of things that we maybe didn't fully understand before. But we're ready to move on to phase 2, which is identifying interests. And then we'll get into options. Sometimes people confuse interests and options. Even groups I've worked with for a long time over sustained projects, over time they will start mixing them up again. It's okay, we'll keep working through it. But here's the way I like to think about it. If we were going to make a decision about where to get dinner from next time, let's Let's imagine U of O catering was unavailable and we nixed Whole Foods after that last plastic fiasco that we all were upset about, okay? And we said, where are we gonna get food from? How many of you are like dreading the conversation already? We're not gonna actually do it. An option is Sizzle Pie. An option is that really yummy Thai place down the street. An option is McDonald's. An option is McMinimans, right? All of those are options. An interest is what's important to you. What are the values? What are the kind of intangibles that are important to you about whatever option it ends up being? So an interest for where we get food, somebody might say, you know, it's really important to me that we support our local economy, okay? So there's lots of different ways that we could support the local economy with where we buy dinner, right? There's not just one, there's a lot of ways that we could do that. Somebody else might say, yeah, local economy, fine, I want it to be healthy, right? I'm really trying to watch my weight, I'm at meetings all the time, so I can't work out. So I really want healthful options. And I would say, well, what does that mean for you? Is it gluten-free? Is it, you know, low calorie? Is it whatever, right? So we would get clear on, okay, we want something healthful. Somebody else would say, well, the city's paying for it. That's my tax dollars, so I want it to be affordable. Okay, I think that cost should be considered and it should be affordable. Somebody else says, forget all that stuff. It should be tasty because we're working hard and I want it to be yummy. Okay, so yummy, affordable, healthful, and local. Okay, so supporting the local economy, a local business. Those are 4 interests. Now, when some of you heard some of those options, McDonald's, Sizzle Pie, whatever, you're like, yes, no, and you could fight it out, right? When we think about the interests, though, there's lots of ways we could find something that's healthful, that's affordable, that's local, right? That we can balance those things. It may not be the perfect solution. We might have a little bit of tension where buying from a local business might be a little bit more expensive in some cases than buying from a chain. But as you're balancing all those things, you say, well, but it's gonna taste better, or oh, but it's gonna have these other benefits, right? So the interests are, again, what's behind what's important to you. When you think about the options for housing affordability, some of you might have been doing this for long enough that like, you already know, change this code to say this thing. And I would say, well, what is it about that change that will make it better? Is it about simplicity? Is it about clarity? Is it about efficiency? Right? Those are our interests that are behind whatever options we're going to come up with. It is tricky to separate these two, but I believe this group is full of geniuses. And if it's not you, it's the person you're sitting next to. Just kidding. So think about, when we think about housing affordability, what are your interests? Some of them might be preservation of some of these awesome things, right? So you might have an interest in preserving natural spaces. There's a lot of ways you can do that and still improve housing affordability. Some of you might say it's really important that it help people, right? That making a difference. I have an interest in improving this situation and that it's got to help people. Okay, so you might have an interest in that. So take a second. If you are a person who works well independently, you can work well independently. If you're a person who likes to talk it out, and you know who you are, that person, find a buddy who also likes to talk it out. If you find your neighbor is like creating a barrier, find somebody else to talk to, okay? But I'm just gonna ask you to independently write down, what are some of your interests as we think about ways to solve this really wicked problem? You can work independently, you can work with a partner. Jot down, what are some of your interests? If you're not sure if it's an interest or an option, ask if that's the only way to do it or if there's lots of ways that you might satisfy that one thing. That's kind of a litmus test. We're gonna snake through and each person's gonna be able to add something to the list. If all of your ideas have been taken, you can pass. But I suspect that we're gonna have quite a few. So let's start. Carmel, can we start with you? Just one. Just one interest. I'm sorry, I just put you on the spot. Just give us one interest when you think about possible solutions. What's important to you?
Well, I talked about housing affordability, not only for
very young families who are housing challenged because they're paying more than 60% or more than 30%, sometimes 60% of their income on housing, but also for older adults who I talk with in the community all the time, who come up to me and say, I am one rent hike away from being homeless, and I'm a retired nurse, but I'm on a fixed income. Or we hear from people who own their homes who want to sell their home but know that there's nothing out there that they can afford to move into.
Excellent. So I'm going to capture two things. I heard housing needs to be inclusive, that it's accessible to young families, older adults, everybody in between. It's a full spectrum solution. And that also folks can enjoy security and stability in their housing, that they're not just waiting for the other shoe to fall and they'll be kicked out. Awesome. Regina, you work together. Awesome. Go ahead, let's pass the mic to the next person.
Economic vitality of a community through healthy and safely housed citizens.
Awesome. So you have an interest in economic vitality. Whatever we do, let's not kill the economy over it. Okay. Was there another piece of that? Sorry, I misunderstood.
Not necessarily that way. I just think that sorry, you want to hold the microphone for me? That healthy and safely housed citizens equals a healthier community, I guess. Is
Thank
really
you.
what
I
I'm
missed
saying.
that last part. Okay, so you want healthy and safely housed. So this is part of that inclusivity, but that when folks aren't safely housed or they're not healthy because of their housing situation, that has an effect throughout. Okay, so we want our solutions to be ones that promote healthy and safely housed citizens. Excellent.
I have an interest in the focus of reuse of existing buildings or redevelopment opportunities within the UGB.
Okay, perfect. So reuse is an option, but what is it about reuse that is appealing?
It preserves open space outside of our urban growth boundary.
Okay, so you want, we have an interest in preserving open space. So which requires a certain amount of infill, or I'm going to call it rehab of your existing spaces. Okay, good. If you want to pass the mic along.
Way simple and way broad, getting people into housing.
All right. People in housing. So you want solutions that work. If we do something that doesn't work, we can pat ourselves on the back and say, hey, we did this thing. And if it doesn't actually make a difference, right, we've wasted a lot of time. Good. Go ahead.
I would like some consideration of transportation options that are accessible and lower cost so people have more money to spend on housing.
Okay, so I'm trying to think, what's the interest in transportation? Is it about, it seems like it's acknowledgement of the whole package and the way that these different variables are connected. Is there something specific? Is there something specific with transportation or the costs associated with transportation that?
Well, I mean, part of it would be a way to get to what I'm thinking of as an example would be if you had development along area that had good transit or good bike paths, then people could choose that rather than having 2 cars for the family or any cars for the family. So thinking about transportation costs, which can make up a significant portion of people's budget, and ways to reduce them so they might have more money to spend on their housing.
Okay, good. So I'm going to say ease of movement. If you can move easily through places, that is going to be better, and that's connected to people's housing. And so the solution could be on the transportation side, but it's also the housing side.
My focus is really on cost.
So ease of movement and
Reasonable cost.
thank you. Ease of movement. So when I think about that ease, it's not just how fluidly, but how affordably. If you can take the something, but it's $50, it doesn't do you any good. Okay, go ahead.
So my interest is a housing inventory in our city.
Housing?
No, I wasn't done. I was just pausing to collect my thoughts. Sorry. A housing inventory where the costs of the housing matches what the actual set of people who live here can afford.
So that's an option. And I love it. It sounds beautiful if we just wave the wand and do that. So what?
No, I think there are many options for how we could get there. My interest is that the set of housing matches the set of people.
So it's about congruence of supply and
Of cost and income.
Okay. So congruence that the housing, this is challenging my Picasso skills, equals people's needs and resources. So that it's really about the alignment, right? Brilliant, thank you.
Let's see, we did it as a table group.
Great.
And one of the things that is not up there is greater variety.
Okay. And there could be lots of reasons that somebody wants variety, right? Part of it might be the congruence, that different people have different needs. Some people just might say aesthetically that having variety is a benefit. So having variety is good. Having options and choices.
Yeah, another interest is, in the end, helping our community, or helping others, or helping unhoused, or helping those that need to get in. So in the end, helping.
Okay. So I'm going to say helping, and this is compassion, I think about, but also for practical purposes.
Equity.
Mm-hmm. So I have an interest in equity. Okay, so there might be cases that those that need the most get more because they have the greatest need in that case. Good. And I keep coming back to this, like helping people. It's not just like bleeding heart because we're kind. There's a part of this that all these other impacts are affecting the community, right? So even if you're like angry, right, it's having an impact on you, and so helping people actually can help solve a bunch of other problems in that way. Good. Where's the microphone now?
I would say a clear and defined process for development.
Okay, so I'm going to say clarity.
Yeah. And
Perfect.
then quality product as well, quality and beautiful design.
So clarity, quality, and beauty. I've seen some block style housing in other countries that I would not necessarily want to incorporate into your code. I've also seen some really beautiful alternatives that house a lot of people. Excellent.
I'm interested in an approach consistent with our climate recovery ordinance, which is probably going to involve traffic largely, keeping that's a specific reason to keep traffic down, and just generally something that helps us keep greenhouse emissions low.
Okay, so I'm going to say alignment with other city goals and climate, traffic. I don't know if traffic is probably not called out as a specific city goal, but that you have real clear climate goals, I know. Good.
Let's see, I put more diversity in options as well as in levels of affordability, I suppose, for buyers.
For buyers. So I captured over here variety and choice. Is there, you know, I could add diversity, diverse options for the buyers. Can I say buyers or renters?
Well, no, because I specifically meant for buyers,
okay.
Meaning that, you know, if you're a first-time home buyer, you have a lot fewer options. Mm-hmm. If you're a single person and you want to live in Eugene, Oregon, and you just want to buy a townhome, we just don't have a lot of those options.
Okay.
You either have to buy a house or
house.
You don't buy or you rent.
Okay, good, excellent. I think we might have missed the table behind you here, and then we'll snake back.
I think the only thing left on my list was is meeting community needs and desires. So the not just surviving, but surviving and thriving. And it's not just meeting needs, but a lot of it is in the other interests, providing the paths for those needs to translate into other opportunities.
Okay. So I'm going to say meeting community needs and desires, and that idea of being able to thrive here, not just like scraping by and making it, but being able to thrive here. This is one of those cases where I think about what that looks like to one person might look different than it does for another person, right? And they're both right, and so how are we going to find the balance between them? It's a perfect example of that. Thanks.
Okay, so it was important to me that we aren't demolishing viable houses and displacing what are usually lower income people and lower cost properties and replacing them with more expensive things that they're totally pushed out.
So not destroying or preserving is an option. What is it about preserving these viable places that's important? Is it about efficiency? Is it about equity and access?
I mean, right now, the lower income house properties are where lower income people live. I just want to make sure we're not in the rush to build more stuff, that we're not demolishing and pushing out people who then, well, where do they go? I mean, now you've got the least expensive property being built into something wonderful.
Right.
What happened to the people who were living in those sort of, you know?
Right. Right. So this is an argument against gentrification.
Sort of.
What's the interest behind that? Why is it so important that we not just gentrify communities? What gets lost when people are pushed out and, you know, $1 million homes are put in? Some of you are like, well, duh, what is it? What gets lost?
Preserving housing for people who have low income.
Let's say justice.
Justice? Equity? What is it about that makes us so mad when people are pushed out? And it might be justice, it might be equity. I'm not sure if we've landed on what. I totally hear your idea. I'm just trying to get it. Like, what's the core of what's so important about that? There's justice, there's fairness.
You can lose community diversity too. I mean, you just have one, you tend to have just one type of person living in the neighborhood.
Yeah, maybe that's what it is. When it's all, I don't want to paint it in a bad way, but when you have all one type of person, you lose something in a neighborhood, right? The vitality of the people here and the diversity that you have here is important. Okay, good. Did you have are you clarifying? Yeah.
I was just going to say, I think you lose your cultural history of an area when you push people out and it's taken over. I think you lose the history of what happened there and those people's story and their community, and so I think that history.
Community integrity.
Okay, so we want preservation of cultural history or community. I heard community integrity. And this is another case where, depending on who you ask, what that means and when somebody came and the culture that they identify with in a place might mean really different things to somebody, right? But we have an interest in valuing a cultural history and maybe in multiple points in time, okay?
My idea was also, I mean, those are great additions. My idea was
but they're not what you meant.
But more financial. I mean, I'm worried.
The most desirable, i.e. affordable properties for redevelopment are also somebody's affordable home.
So compounding, you don't want to compound the problem. If your interest is not compounding the problem.
Well, preserving existing is an option. So what is it about? Is it about efficiency? Is it about let's keep chewing on it.
Well, I was just going to say, I just want to point out, this is also in competition with the urban growth boundary issue.
Yeah, so
if you can't gentrify and take land that is underutilized or that is maybe run down or not safe housing, you know, how does that compete with the conversation about the urban growth?
Totally. And this is a case where interests are awesome and we can be in favor of all of them, and it's a wicked problem. There's tensions, right? So there's going to be trade-offs with these things and we have to find the balance. So I want to keep chewing. Did you have an idea for what this preservation thing is about?
No, but Chris did, and I just wanted to, I mean, she said, I mean, I think the goal is not to compound or exacerbate poverty.
Yeah. Don't make poverty worse. I'm not sure that that's the most articulate interest ever, but I think that's what it's about. You don't want to make the situation worse. But don't make the problem worse. Yeah. Awesome. I don't know where the mic is. Go ahead.
So for me, it's provide tools and information to include minorities to become homeowners.
Awesome. So you have a interest in inclusivity.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to say of all residents. Okay, good. Thank you.
Predictability.
Predictability. Think about a business climate. If you have to make decisions, it's nice to know what the context is you're working in, or predictability in different
Yes,
flavors.
for everyone. For people in trying to get housing built, for people who might live next to housing that's going to be built, it helps everyone to know what can be approved.
Nice, nice. Thank you. Ted, I think coming up to you.
Livability.
Tell me more about that.
It's the idea that you want to build housing, you want to have housing for people, but you want to have housing that people want to live in. You don't want to just warehouse them. And so it's that idea of air, it's light, it's having space for a garden if you want it. I mean, part of it is walkable neighborhoods, that you don't have to pay $40 a year for the potential of maybe finding a place for your car.
So
parking. I mean, it goes into all those things that make Eugene desirable, that we want, and that has to be incorporated, and I think should be our primary starting point before we get to objective. We start with subjective, and livability should be at the base of it.
So that in any solution we want livability, and again, that's a case where what's livable to one person may not be livable to another, and we're going to find the balance, right, and figure out where that tension gets resolved. Let's keep going for new ideas.
My interest is increased private sector engagement and investment in housing affordability.
So I'm going to say you have an interest in partnerships, public-private. What is it about partnerships, though, that is important? Why is that important to you?
Well, it was just good for me to see the new two Dans and Mark here today. I did feel like private sector developers, we needed more of those folks in the room. Like Ed and I may have a different perspective on the CET, but I think we both agree that the voters in this county should have the opportunity to approve some sort of an affordable housing funding stream.
All right. So one of the ways that you can start telling a group is exhausting their interest and moving into options as they start getting antsy about the options, the CET or the space for a garden or whatever else. So in a way, that's a good sign. We may be exhausting our interest, but be careful. Be careful that you aren't dabbling into the options too quickly. Let's make sure we get all of our interests.
So my interest, you'll have to help me with this, but
right.
My interest is in having, as we build our new neighborhoods, having upward and downward mobility for people, so that we aren't building all one type of house in a neighborhood that when somebody wants to downsize, they lose their whole community. And so having a variety in our neighborhoods.
Okay, so again, it gets back to variety, so people can be mobile, and the real interest is the mobility to switch when you walk. Good. I think here, and then we'll wrap up with our last couple.
Allow our very limited buildable land inventory to be developed.
That's an option.
So
what about allowing, allowing a limited?
Allow our very limited buildable land inventory to be developed.
Okay.
Stop
so
NIMBY,
is it about freedom? Is that about freedom to build, or
we have a buildable land inventory that's supposed to be able to be developed. However, neighborhoods and others continue to file appeals when those developments try to happen.
All right, so I'm going to say fluidity in building. If stuff is always locked up in codes or adversarial, whatever, everything's stuck. So we have an interest in fluidity, that what can be done can be done. Yeah, does that sound okay?
I have an interest, and also we're trying to do this, is providing what we're calling missing middle housing and pocket neighborhoods that create real senses of community within a small cluster of homes.
So that's an option, but I will capture the sense of community.
Well, it's an interest. It's an interest
development.
There's a small cluster of housing is an option, but having a sense of community and kind of that closeness.
Well, security again.
And safety, okay?
And affordability.
Yeah, we all agree on the affordability part. Thanks, appreciate it.
I have a little bit different slant on the infill. I think that we need to look at a lot more places where we can go up.
Okay, so
and more multifamily.
So those are, yeah, they are options, but let's think about what's important about that. Is it about, does going
Density.
But okay, but why is density important?
Because we can't go out.
You don't want to gentrify all of it.
Yeah.
So is it really about, yeah, I was gonna say, is it about efficiency? We have the preservation of open space, which is a piece of it, but it sounds like maybe efficiency.
It's also livability, because people want to be able to walk to different amenities.
Okay.
And those amenities you're not gonna find those outside somewhere if you're the only house for 5 miles.
Got it.
Agreed. I do want to touch real quick, sorry I was out, but on the older adults and the inclusive ones. So we're finishing up right now, wrapping up a 117 unit multifamily one, and one of the biggest people that are reaching out to us are older people that want to downsize and free up single family homes, but there's no good places in Eugene for them to go. So I think we're on a curve, and we're going to see that hit pretty hard, and we're not ready for those people, I think, in the market.
Echoing that interest. Thank you, Dan. Sorry, I'm rushing you along now. I want to move on to options because I can tell you're hungry for it. You guys work together?
Most of ours have been covered, but I would say accessibility to public transportation.
And I think we have, let's just double check. I had the movement. Where do I have that? Middle of the first one. Ease of movement at a reasonable cost. So that's going to be access to public transportation, etc. Was there a different piece of that we want to add to?
I just felt like ease of movement covers more bike paths and like infrastructure and parks around town. I think it's important that people have accessibility to bus lines and stuff, because cars are not an option for everybody if we're addressing affordable housing.
I'm going to say accessibility to multimodal. I learned that word on a different City of Eugene project. Transportation. Awesome. So not just walkability, but all those other ways too. Good. Go ahead, Dan.
Everything on my list but one has been beaten to death, and that one has been touched upon, and it is to incentivize private sector workforce housing development.
So what is it about that? Did you see a theme? What is it about incentivizing? Because that's an option. Is that about accountability, that we're all in it together, and so if you're a big employer, you have a skin in the game? Or I'm just reading Eliza's face. What?
I feel like it's about not focusing on one population over another, and it's not just about people at the low end or people in the middle. It's about all income levels.
Okay.
I think we have a bigger problem at the low income level, though. That's the one that we don't need a lot of incentives for everything that's not at the lower end. That's where we need incentives, because you have insufficient supply. And private sector is not going to do it because market forces will never support that. It needs broader, more creative subsidy program in order for that to ever become a reality.
All right, so I'm going to say, because subsidies are an option, but it sounds like it's about shared responsibility. This is about quality of life for everybody. So whether you're an employer or you're government or you're a developer or a neighborhood person, we all have a piece in it, and we can all do something that can help it. Okay? Sure. Can I just say, I love it when people are like, the city should this, and the city should that, and the city should this, and don't raise my taxes. just putting it out there. Go ahead.
So I have two. First is respect for different values and needs. Acknowledging that livability means different things to different people, and that what might be your dream house is my nightmare house. And respecting those differences.
Okay.
And then sustainability, not just from a climate perspective, but from a if I'm going to end up be paying for all of the things that we do now 40 years from now, and we can't afford to do anything new because we're still paying for the stuff that we did now, that's
Good.
a problem too.
So thinking about long-term, kind of having long-term thinking. All right, a couple more.
A dignified life for everyone.
You have an interest in dignity. I like that. Thank you very much.
Might have been covered.
It took till the last person. Now, you win. Yeah, we're good. Whew. This is a big list. John? Yes. John's joining us. John, you want to introduce yourself real fast? Nope, John's happy to go along.
I just got off the freeway. My name is John Van Landingham. I work as a lawyer at Legal Aid. I don't want to add anything.
Thank you, John. Appreciate you being here. Is there anything that is just like so unique and so burning that's not up here that we need to add it? Yeah?
I have a value around housing that accommodates multiple generations in one household.
Okay, that's an option. What is it about that? Is that about sense of community and closeness? Is it about supporting different family living arrangements?
Really specific to intergenerational living.
Okay, so
I think that's an option. I think that's value, right? There are different ways you can accomplish.
What is it about that that's so appealing to you?
That generations can take care of each other.
Okay.
One's younger, one's older ones. We got a lot of boomers who aren't going to be able to afford to live as they age.
So I'm going to call it intergenerational support.
Yeah.
Because it might not be one family unit, it might be mixed intergenerational, but that people can have mutual benefit in bringing those different age groups together and sharing a living space. All right. Intergenerational support, maybe, and there's some ways that might fit within diversity, but it might be a specific thing that could be a look for or spark an idea for somebody. Excellent. Whew. Awesome. You have colors on your name tags. You knew this was coming. Caleb, go with the green on the bottom. Dan, I think that's purple. Or blue. I'm not sure. If you're colorblind, subtly ask the person next to you what color your name tag is. Sorry, not the most accessible, but shapes were complicated in the Excel spreadsheet. We are now excitedly on to options. Here's the great thing. At this phase, you are brainstorming. Any idea goes on the list. You might hate that idea. Put it on the list anyway. It might just be something that we work together and come to some agreement on, okay? This is not the time to debate them. This is not the time to stifle them. This is not the time to stomp on somebody's foot and tell them to go home and stop talking, okay? This is a time where we want to bring our creative juices. What are all the different ways that we could meet as many of these interests as possible? You know the routine. You will get markers at your spot. Pick somebody who can write legibly to record for you. Again, I want to see a plethora of ideas. Don't waste your time discussing them. Don't roll your eyes and say, oh, that'll never work, okay? If it's an idea that gets said, write it down. We're going to have a giant list. Here are your locations. If you have a red name tag, you're going to be in the back. To see if we're still coherent. Raise your hand if there's an idea up there that maybe makes you a little bit nervous or is maybe not your top choice. All right, good. You should have a mix. You should have a mix of some of both of those things, and that's great. This is one of the times in the process that we're going to drop in a little bit of outside information, and you can decide to do with it what you want. At your spots, maybe under your easel or at your feet, there's a packet. Some of you are going to start reading this, and I ask you to listen first. This packet is an inventory of strategies that was identified by Strategic Economics, which is a consulting firm in the Bay Area. And they are the economists that's been hired to inform City Council, and they will be submitting their own information. We wanted to share their expertise with you all. And so there are here 31 different options, and they're broken down by categories. This is dense. I read this the first time. You should have seen the first draft. I read this and was like, holy cow, How do we share this with the group? So we broke it into chunks. Within your groups, I'm going to ask you to review just one of these pages and see if there's an idea on here that you want to add to your list. You can keep coming up with your own ideas too, but if you read the ideas on your assigned page and you're like, that's interesting, that might work, please add it to your list that the group could consider. Okay? City Council will get the full economic analysis of all of these things, but we want to pepper you with some new information. If you, I'll assign your pages in a second. Y'all are reading all of it. I'm going to assign your pages. If you read one of these and are like, I have no idea what that's talking about, ask your group. Hopefully somebody in your group will know, or wave down one of the fabulous city staff. They are raising their hands now with great enthusiasm. Hey! And they can try to explain it as well. If none of you can figure out the idea, scrap it. It may not be a good, no, I'm just kidding. You could put it up and say we want to learn more about it. So reds, you guys are taking page 1. Purples, you're all taking page 2. Greens, you are taking page 3. The page numbers are at the bottom. Blues, you're on page 4. Black, team black, you are on page 5. And orange, you are on page 6. You can keep coming up with your own ideas, but see if any of these from the housing economist folks spark your fancy. Take a second to read, and then you can get back to your writing. This is where I wish we had 3 more hours tonight, but we don't. All right, I'm going to give you quick instructions for your next step, and we are really limited on time, and I really apologize that we won't have enough time to fully digest. We will fully digest these later. I'm going to give you 2 pieces of instructions. You will receive dots. These are not for voting for your favorites. They're not green, they're blue. Okay? Make sure each person in your team has some dots. You should each have a strip of about 4 of them. In just a second here, you're going to take a tour. Did I not get you guys? 4, 5, 6. There you go. In just a second here, you're going to take a tour of the other brilliant ideas that your group came up with. You are, here you go. Oh, yours are on the floor there. They're right there. They're right there.
Oh, we got dots.
Yeah. When you see something that you're like, I'd like more information about that, you're going to put a dot on it. You might like more information about all of these things, but I would encourage you to take a tour and choose them carefully. If you could get a more thorough analysis of some of these things, a more thorough explanation. Some of you might read it and be like, I don't even know what any of that means. Okay? If that's the case, but you think it has promise, put a dot there. Okay? Some of you might be like, I'm skeptical that that's actually impactful. I want to see the numbers, or I want to see if there's any analysis that can help us. You're going to put a dot there. Okay? There will be overlap. You have the same ideas in multiple places, but we're going to mash them all together. So in the end, we'll kind of come up with the areas that you have the most questions about, and you'll have an opportunity to ask some more specific targeted questions later as well. All right? So you're going to tour in a clockwise fashion. Okay, see the other ideas that are out there, and when you see an idea that you want more information about, that you're curious about, please put a dot by that idea.
So 2 dots?
You have 4 dots.
How's yourself while we go around?
over more of an economy.
If your priority is food right now, they're taking the food away, go grab a sandwich. Sorry, I forgot to announce it earlier. Go grab food if you want to take some home with you. Lunch tomorrow is made. Start, but don't you worry, we've got just a little bit of wrap up. One of the sheets that you've received is existing programs within the city of Eugene. These may have been options that folks generated, not realizing that they were things already in the works. They might be things that exist but should be expanded. Wanted to offer that as information that we can add to the conversation next time if you deem it's necessary. Before you get into the evaluation, some of you are already like, da, 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 da. As long as it's 5, 5, 5. No, I'm just kidding. Let me explain a little bit about what's going to happen next. I will, tomorrow, and maybe the next day probably, be compiling these lists, looking for overlap when ideas are the same, and then kind of synthesizing the dots too. So if something got 5 dots over here and the same idea got 4 dots over there, I'm gonna put those together and from that visually be able to see what are the areas that we really need some more information about, okay? You may have additional really specific questions, and in looking at these, there might be like specifically, I want to understand this thing. If you'd like to write those specific questions on the back of your evaluation, I can also compile those. At our next meeting, we're going to have a visitor from Strategic Economic come and be a part of the conversation. So we will give her all of your dots of they want to know more about these things, and we'll give her a list of those questions. She won't be able to address everything, but she'll hopefully be able to address the top priority areas where you had a lot of questions. And that'll help weigh or help inform your decision making going forward. Some of you might hear from her and be like, nah, I still don't like it, or I don't believe her, and that's fine too. Okay, but she is a respected professional who's going to bring a bunch of really rich information to help inform your conversation. Right. So that's what's going to happen with the dots. A couple other process things. We have a website. How many of you seen the website? Yeah, good. It is posted up here in case you haven't. And I think Jason includes it in the emails that he sends out. But it's the eugene.or-or.gov/housing tools. Information from this meeting will be posted there. If you would like to engage with different folks that you represent, have them look at what's there and provide feedback, we will happily do that. I forgot to mention you all received a compilation of the 4 commenters that gave feedback after the last time. So I'll do the same thing. I'll synthesize people's feedback and give it to the group. I totally forgot to mention it at the beginning. I apologize. But we had 4 people after the last meeting that weighed in the online form and gave feedback. So we'll do the same thing again, and you're welcome to share that with folks. All right? As you're furiously filling out your evaluations, because you know that I've only got 1 more minute to go, I'm going to pull a couple more numbers. I didn't use these nearly enough. I'm going to pull a couple more numbers and just hear from folks. Any closing sentence that you'd like to share for the good of the world, good of the team? Person 1A. Who's person 1A? Go ahead. Closing sentence or thoughts as we wrap up today.
I'm a little disappointed that we were the only group that put down a homeless shelter on our list.
You were the only ones who were thinking so specifically about that thing. All right.
There is a group of people in the city where affordable is going to have to be free.
I'm glad you thought of it. Thank you. Person 4D. One sentence in thinking about today. 4D. 4D has left the building. How about 4F?
Let's see, I guess there are lots of options out there. And the devil is going to be in the details of trying to prioritize and come to agreement.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate that. How about 6C? 6C? Y'all know I can't read your name tags from this far away, so you're pretending like you are not number 6C. Last one. 5A. Did you get called again? 5A? Oh, you wanted to pass. I'll pull another one. Sit 5F. 5F.
This is hilarious.
I cannot believe y'all have left. 5D. I called you already. I'm skipping. 2C. Have I called on you this way before? No, go ahead.
I'm not entirely convinced that this is going to lead to a great, wonderful problem solving for our community, but I am convinced that we have a lot of people in this room. The room is full of people who are smart and energetic and engaged, and I think that's really cool.
Awesome. I will echo that at the next meeting we will not be holding hands and singing Kumbaya, and we will be doing exceptionally good work, right? And working through really hard challenges and finding agreement where we can. And I have full faith in our group to do that. We will see you again on, I covered it up, November 14th at 8:30. You can leave your evaluations, 5:30, did I say 8:30? Leave your evaluations and your name tags on the table. If you want to leave a handbook or anything else that you may have want to leave behind, you can. If your name is on it, we'll try to get it back to you. Otherwise, we'll see you on the 14th, and thank you. Have a great night. Drive safe.